Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the Black Health Matters Fall Health Summit. My name is Deidre N. Tate, and I'm the Director of Event Production for Black Health Matters, and I'm also a proud member of Jack and Jill of America Incorporated's Bergen-Passaic Chapter Associate Group. So it's my pleasure to be able to introduce Sherelle Gross, Esquire, who is our National Program Director, who's going to moderate this panel. But before we get started, just wanted to mention that in the United States, a Black child's autism diagnosis may be delayed for up to 3 years. Unfortunately, stigma coupled with a lack of resources lead to a lack of or delayed access to evaluation, diagnosis, and services. What can we as a community do about this? I couldn't think of any better group of people to discuss it than who you see on our panel today. So Sherelle, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Deidre and Tate. I appreciate that very much. So good afternoon. We're so very glad that you guys hung in there to hang out with us. And so let me just tell you a little bit about Jack and Jill. We are the largest African-American family membership organization. We have over 12,200 mothers, 20,000 children and teens. We operate in 252 chapters, and we operate through 7 regions. We are led by Cornisha Miguel Brown, who could not be here today. She's doing mommy duty, so she sent me instead. And as a National Program Director, this topic is very, very dear to my heart because I get the benefit of leading a dynamic group of women that are in our We Are One task force. And in that task force, we are committed to ensuring that all of our Jack and Jills, meaning our children and their moms, get the most out of their Jack and Jill experience. And in part of that, we focus on making sure we support our autistic children. And so I could not go on today without acknowledging little Isabella. And Holly, I saw your tweet about Isabella the other day. And little Isabella, the little girl in Utah, who is being funeralized today after being bullied for her autism and her race. And so we couldn't have a better time to talk about this today, where we talk about racism and during this Black Health Matters panel, and we talk about autism. And so with that, I'm going to first ask you, Dr. Holly, Miss Mother Holly, you have been in this autism as an autism advocate for quite a while. Why don't you start us off with a few opening comments?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm always down for an autism conversation. It's what I do all day long. I talk to and mentor many families that are experiencing their diagnosis. I'm so grateful to Jack and Jill. I'm so grateful to everyone who is watching right now that you are advocating for our kids. The intersectionality of having autism and being Black is something that we don't talk about enough. You mentioned this young lady, and when I tell you, you just said her name, and I felt tears welling up. I was so impacted by this story on so many levels, but in the end, obviously, it's about the stigma that autism carries still after all these years. And my son was diagnosed when he was 3. I was 20 plus years ago. What I love is that we are having a conversation of what autism is and what it is not, and what we can do to get rid of the stigma, because the more we have a stigma, the less we're embracing this community. And we're also in our community, when we have stigma, we're keeping our kids from being diagnosed. They're getting diagnosed too late, as you mentioned, Sherelle, and they're getting diagnosed, and it's not okay, because there's that window of time, and I'll let the other experts speak on this more, but just being a mom, there's a window of time when you really want to get your kid as much intervention as possible. And because our kids are getting diagnosed late, they don't have the access and the resources and the time to start to assimilate into the world. And so I'm just super proud to be here. Proud autism mom and advocate. And thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for spending time with us today. That brings us to you, Dr. Pumavle. Holly talked about, the diagnosis of autism. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So thank you so much for the invitation. I'm truly honored to be sitting at the same table with all of you and everyone that's here. And, thank you all for hanging out with us. And I apologize for the technical glitches in the beginning. So I'm a proud mom, and as I do my presentation, it shares a little bit about my stories woven in there. So I'm Dr. Genevieve Kumople. I'm actually a pharmacist by training. And these are my babies. So oftentimes I can't talk about autism unless I show all the different faces of autism. So the little boy that on the left-hand side that I'm hugging is a young boy in Ghana, West Africa. And I'll share a little bit about that. And then some of the other faces are the folks that have traveled with us to Africa and other parts. And so autism affect all of us at different phases. If you go to the next slide, my goal this afternoon, if I can go into it right away as the presentation, is to kind of talk about some of the signs of, developmental delays and what are the red flags. I see some questions that are popping up already in the chat. So I'm hoping that as I'm talking, this will help to address it and talk about the key therapies and supports and resources that we should be engaging in right now. We'll talk about some of the steps that we should take to address the issues. And then, of course, I'll share my goal. That's the name of the organization I'm a part of, our story. If you go on to the next slide. So a little bit about me, just on the corner at the bottom is my family. That's my pride and joy. Nicholas, who was diagnosed with autism almost 18 years ago. And he's the reason why that has changed the trajectory of my life completely. I'm a minister in my church. So if faith comes into this conversation, just I know that it is because of our faith in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, that I sit here. And that's the reason why we're doing what we're doing. And I'm sure I see smiles on folks' face. So you get what I'm saying. And so you can go on to the next slide. And the organization that I lead since 2008, we've been supporting families across the country. So I have the URL there. So if anybody needs to reach out, you can go to the next slide. We've been supporting families for 13 years and 13 years of working with other people who also are walking a journey that's not easy. And part of that is providing resources and grant. And this is the family out in West Africa, in Ghana. Go on to the next slide. So now I can get into the autism spectrum. So what is autism spectrum disorder? Well, autism, going to the next slide, just by definition, it's a neurobiological disorder. Next slide, please. It's a neurodevelopmental disorder that presents with three characteristics. Communication challenges. So sometimes you have a child that's delayed in speaking, lost language, and even when they speak, the words are not clear. It also presents with someone who have what we call a stereotypical behavior, meaning that they do behave in certain things that may seem abnormal to some of us. A lot of times when the kids are younger, you may see them tippy-toeing, playing with certain toys inappropriately. It also may have an issue in social interaction. So this is something that's more of seeing how somebody is behaving. So it's more of a physiological. But beyond it, I think there's other things that's going on as well. I think it's a neuroimmune disorder, meaning that there's some things in the environment that may be contributing to it. There may be certain things that people are exposed to, whether it's foods, that can also affect them. Sometimes infections can trigger a whole host of what's going on. And what I say in the body, that manifests in the brain. So it's a complex issue, not just on the standpoint of my child is not talking, but it is more holistic. And that's what I want to get across to everybody here is when you look at your child that may be having some challenges, don't just look and say that child is slow. Look to see, are there other things going on along with it that is now presenting as if. So I have my son who was, when he was 2.5, was diagnosed. And when he was 5, he could barely even sit or eat, and he was having a lot of issues. He was having health-related issues. He was out of school 5 times a week. Sometimes we're lucky that he gets to go to school because he was having a lot of ear infections. He was having a lot of leaky gut syndrome. He would eat and the food would show up in the stools. He was having a lot of sleep issues. If you go to the next slide, he was having a lot of sleep issues. He would not sleep at night. So if I'm describing these symptoms to someone who, beyond just the fact that the child is not talking, this is something to also pay attention to. Go on to the next slide. So how common is this? Right now, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, the last statistic that I came across from 2000 said 1 in 54 individuals, 8-year-olds, are diagnosed with the autism spectrum disorder. And it's 4 times common in boys than it is in girls. So what are the key points that we want to get across in breaking the stigma? Is to understand the development of an individual or a child. That the first 6 months, their child is supposed to be doing certain things, copying sounds, beginning to sit up without support, playing, stringing vowels. By 12 months, they're supposed to be, responding to simple requests. They should be able to say bye-bye, be able to gesture, say mama and dada. So 18 months, they're supposed to be having single words. 2 years, supposed to be following single instruction. They're supposed to be pointing to things. By 3 years, they're supposed to carry on conversation. By 4 years, they're supposed to be hopping on and standing on one foot. So if there are any delays along this, we need to talk about it. So at milestone 4 months, is that child babbling? Is that child responding to affection? Is that child liking to play at the age of 6 months? 9 months, do they have favorite toys? Are they understanding yes or no? Milestone at 1, are they trying to say something, waving bye-bye? If the child is not doing any of these things, we need to act. It is not okay to ignore. So what are the red flags? Bottom line is this: babbling and pointing by the age of 1. No single words, or age by 2 months, 16 months, and not saying 2 phrases, not responding to name, loss of language. Now, I want to highlight that part. Loss of language is a big, big red flag. It means that we need to get attention immediately. Poor eye contact, lining up toys. For my story, he lost language at 18 months. Saying baba, dada, and then lost language. Going on to the next slide. And this is where I call the patterns of autism onset. So the Kennedy Krieger Institute had done some work and noted about 44% of individuals may have what they call regressive autism. Some of them may have plateau in their development. So the child may be developing and all of a sudden you start to see it's a plateau. And some of them about 40% of the kids may have early sign, and then it keeps going, and progressively you start to see them delay. Going to the next slides. So what are we saying that we should do? What are the steps? The steps is, based on what I've described so far, discuss the concerns with your child's doctor. Don't just talk with friends and neighbors. We got to talk to the doctors about it. Between the age of birth and 3, contact early intervention. Between 3 to 5, preschool. So what we're saying here is you don't need a referral. Doctors refer to get early intervention. This is in the state of New Jersey, but where I am. If any of these things that I've talked about is an example, then we need to make sure that we act early. Go on to the next slide, please. So what are the needed support and resources? And we won't talk about it here. Autism spectrum disorders are treatable. It means that we just need to factor the fact that the behavioral and communication techniques, we know that there are medical issues, so we can do medical workup with speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, behavioral intervention, social skills, and then also work up all the other pieces. This is a busy slide, but the point here is that we as parents also have a responsibility to make sure we're feeding the child. If that child is picky eater, that child is not getting in vitamins and minerals appropriately, that is because there is a lot of things going on medically that we need to address as well. Go on to the next slide. And then the piece here is that supports is what we want to highlight. Supports are resources and strategies aimed to promote development, education, and interest. And we want to make sure that each and every one of our children gets the necessary support in the home, in the community, with employment, with advocacy, health and safety. These are all factors that are necessary. So who are the folks that need support? Any child that has regressive autism, they were speaking, lost language, they're not developing, they need support. So early intervention is key. So the likelihood of severity of the diagnosis has to do with how soon we get them the supports that they need. Go on to the next slide. So take home message from me on this side, just from mindful of the time, is this. We just need to make sure, go on to the next slide, please. Focus on introducing a child early, engage them. Do not leave them isolated. Don't be ashamed of your child. Go on to train that child and make sure they develop to lead a good life. So don't worry about what caused what. Don't worry about who's giving my child label. Just be about trying to get the support for that individual. Go on to the next slide, please. So we want you to be an advocate. That's what we're here for. We are advocate. We wear this autism mom hat, not because we just want to wear a hat, but because we know that it's important in communicating. Getting on to the next slide, which is almost the end. Every person deserves to reach their full potential. So there's no shame in seeking help for your child. And
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I mean, that was a lot of information, and thank you for putting that together in a short period of time. So you talked about advocate, and you talked about taking action. So that's going to bring me to you, Mother Holly. I have to call you Mother Holly because we're all moms on this stage, and I have to
Mother Holly.
Mother Holly. So no, she talked. Dr. Kumaplay talked about acting, and that was a lot of information. So know what you know now. Tell me, what are your top 3 things that you wish you had known when Rodney Jr. was first diagnosed?
First of all, I wish I had someone like Dr. Kumaplay to walk me through that journey like she just did. I think what I say to so many people who are just getting the diagnosis, that the big and the best news is that you have resources, and we have told the story now, so that you will understand this journey a little bit better. When you get the diagnosis of autism, many times you don't get a handbook of Welcome to Autism, and you just panic. You don't know what to do. There is a level of shame. There is a level of guilt. You need to push past all of that because time is of the essence. It's very, very, I wish I knew how little time I had. I wouldn't have spent the first year being angry. I was angry the first year, and I wouldn't have spent so much time being angry at my husband because he was in denial. I would have used that energy. I would have used that time to roll up my sleeves and get resources and interventions for my child. I had the blessing of resources. I had a great job. My husband had a great job. But what about families that don't have access to the easiest of simplest of things, the low-hanging fruit, speech therapy, occupational therapy, intervention, all kinds of interventions. And that's why we started Holly Rod Foundation, because we really wanted to help provide resources for families impacted by autism. So I guess I really wish I had been more patient. I was very, I felt very bad. I felt very sad. I felt you go through a little grieving period. I wish I had gone through that a little bit quicker. Now, if my husband were here, he would say, oh, no, you went barreling past that grief stage and went right into rolling up the sleeves, gangster mama stage, because I was advocating for my child in such an aggressive way. But I really wasn't. Inside, I was still processing the whole thing. So I would say also, I wish I knew to build a bigger team around my child. Team RJ is so powerful because sometimes people in the autism world, how do I say this? Sometimes family doesn't get it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes family doesn't understand it. And you may not be able to get your mama and them to understand what autism is. Because oftentimes I've heard it in our community. I've heard people say in my family, if you can discipline him out of this. He's just not being good. He's a bad boy, whatever. He's not paying attention. He's spoiled. He's lazy, all those things. So the quicker you can get out of those early phases and start being proactive in getting your child intervention, the better. That window of time is pretty small, and you want to exploit that.
That's some really great advice. Thank you so much. Dr. Kumaplay and Mom Kumaplay. Holly just mentioned a few myths, right? And part of this panel is sort of breaking the stigma. Tell us about what are some of the other myths about autism that you could talk to us about today?
So a lot of times people think, it's the genetic means that my dad or my father's grandmother or somebody developed slow. So therefore the child is going to come out of it. Just wait it out. It will come out of it. The other myths is, this person is the grandmother, I'm of African descent. The grandmother is a witch and the witch bewitched the child. And so we're going to have to lay hands on this child. Nothing wrong with laying hands. I'm a minister of healing in my church. And nothing wrong with that, but we can't sit and wait and say, I'm waiting for the Lord to supernaturally do it on his own. And that's the other myth, which is what we see. And this is why this summit today is so amazing, because it cuts across all health issues, where a lot of times in our community, we are waiting on the Lord alone to do what the Lord should do. And don't realize we need to partner with the Lord to use the tools that he has given us in our hands to use. And so one of the myths is, we're going to have to wait on the Lord to heal him supernaturally or heal her supernaturally, which is not completely true. The other myth is thinking that this is just a mental health issue. And which is why I barrel through a lot of information in 10 minutes. And usually that talk is an hour long, talking about the importance of the health component. So it's not just about focusing on the child's development, but also paying attention to the fact that they need to be cared for from a health standpoint.
Yes.
Is there autism that's causing them to have constipation? What does one got to do with the other? They got a health issue, address it. They're a picky eater, so we just let them eat pizza all day long. That's not healthy. So that's the other thing. So we're just thinking that it's just a mental issue when it's really a body, spirit, and soul issue.
Oh, that was powerful. Thank you. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And can I
please. Yes.
These are the things 20 years ago that you did not hear in any kind of autism talk. You didn't hear this. Certainly not about the health,
right?
Aspects and how the brain, and the gut are connected. These are things we were just starting to talk about when RJ was diagnosed in 2000. I just want to add a couple of more things that autism is not. It is not retardation.
Yes.
It's not bad parenting. It's not defiance disease. Autism is not a disease. It's a disorder. It's not ill-mannered. It's not lazy. It's not emotionless. And it's not stupidity. And guess what? It's not contagious. I literally, when RJ was 3 years old, there was a little boy mother that would not play with him because they thought his autism was contagious. We laugh and roll our eyes about that now, but there was a time when that was more prevalent, and people still have a lot of misconceptions. So this is an awesome conversation we're having today.
Oh, wow. That was great. So, there's a lot of I'm hearing a lot of and so obviously as a mom, we have our family, we have our community around us, right? And Holly, I saw you once on the panel at a conference, and you had your mom and you had your daughter Ryan there, and you guys were talking about preparing RJ, for life as an adult. So talk to us a little bit about, how do you prepare your child for adulthood using your entire community?
Well, of course, and Dr. Kumaplay knows, and everyone on this panel knows, and all the participants, that every child with autism is different and they all have a different journey. But for us, it was about trying to prepare RJ for independence, self-advocacy, getting him a job so he would have purpose and he would feel like he was part of the community. And so our journey was very specific, unique to RJ. But again, I mentioned earlier to build a team around your child, because when you're not going to be there anymore, you really need him or her to have community. So that is so key. RJ's story is so heartwarming because when he was 3, we were told he would never do a laundry list of things. We call it the never day. He would never speak. He would never mainstream in school. He would never have friends, meaningful employment. He would never work. He would never drive. So, he drove to work yesterday, 20 years later. So these are things that are amazing. And you talked about the faith element, doctor, and that is so important that you have that faith and you use your church to support you. But just like you said, you also have to be very proactive in how you intervene and how you learn and gather resources on your child to help your child. But RJ is, he's such a blessing. He's a young man who does not know how to lie. He doesn't possess the ability to lie. And I bring that up and people, oh, that's so great. And that's such a beautiful quality. Well, in this world, you kind of have to learn how to lie just a little bit to get through. Like you just can't tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. But what we've found with him is that the more people we surround him with that understand who he is, the more it helps him thrive in his life.
Oh, that's beautiful. So we have 5 minutes left, and so I want to get to a few questions. So Dr. Kumaplay, let's try this one. Do you have any guidance for twice exceptional children with ASD? The school focuses on the behavior and challenges and not the positive gifts. Do you have any guidance?
In terms of the school focusing on what? I missed that.
She said apparently the school focuses on the behavior of the child. And so do you have any guidance that you could provide for this attendee?
Yeah, so remember the school's responsibility is to help the child to develop so that they can be a productive member of society. The goal there is that throughout their lifespan, they're supposed to learn academically, socially, in every manner. So the focus cannot just be on behavior. The focus should also be on the social skills, socialization, which is why we have to have them have recess, which is why we want to make sure they're included in every aspect of the child's development. Oftentimes our focus is so focused on the behavior that we miss all the other aspects that we need to ensure that individual has. That's why we have to be an advocate. You got to march up into the school and say, you know what, we need to be able to ensure that this child has all these elements so that they can be a productive member of society. Because if they don't have that social skills, they're not going to be effective. If they don't have the academic skills, they're going to have challenges. And so I will definitely say to you, make sure and if the child has an IEP or the child has some kind of 504 plan, it is incorporated in that these elements are also crucial.
Okay, thank you. So what I want to do is, because our time is short, I want to hear Mother Holly's statement on that question, but I want you, while you have your mic hot, just to briefly talk about, some people feel that the MMR vaccination is the cause of autism. Can you briefly discuss that? If it's a no, say no. Just say it briefly, because I want you, Holly, to talk about the question that that was asked about the school's focus on behavior and how to help that mom advocate for her child.
Yeah, I know we could talk about it all day. Oh my goodness, I can't believe time is going so fast. But about the exceptional children with ASD, I think that's part of the issue here. We don't have a neurodiverse program at school. So these children, our children with autism, are gifted in so many ways. They have so many amazing blessings and gifts, and there's ways to reach them and help them learn. They learn differently. That's helping them get jobs. There's so many ways to do that. And so I just always encourage people to look beyond what they can't do and focus on what they can do.
That's a great. So I think I'm almost out of time, but I'm going to throw this question over to you, Dr. Kumaplay, because I want you to answer that MMR vaccination question. And also there's a question that also we ask, if a child is tested, is it necessary to have a child tested if they only seem mildly affected? So if you can answer both of those, that would be great.
So the question of MMR has not been demonstrated to be absolutely the causality. So that answer is a no. The question of, in terms of getting the diagnosis and getting testing, it doesn't hurt to get tested anytime. The goal there is really to be paying attention to the development and getting them supports early. So really, really crucial in that regards.
Okay. So I think we're just about out of time. Looking at my cue here, but since they haven't, done the Sandman and kicked the mic off, I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to say closing comments, because we do have a lot of great notes in the chat and in the Q&A. Thanking you guys for this fabulous panel. I thank you for the opportunity to moderate. And with that, I'm going to leave it to you guys with closing comments. So let's go with you, Mother Holly, and you, Mother Dr. Kumaplay.
Okay, so thank you to everyone on here. This is such an important conversation, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I do want to do a shameless plug for my new Christmas movie, December 4th, Hallmark Channel, Hallmark Movies and Mysteries. It's called Our Christmas Journey, and it's about autism. It's about a single mom of a child with autism. It's a movie that is so near and dear to my heart. It is the very first time an actor with autism actually gets to play the part of a child with autism. So that is in the representation that we need. So make sure you check that out. I think that is my gift to try to unlock stigma, because whenever you represent in media, more people see autism in a different light. So make sure you guys check out Our Christmas Journey.
Okay, so I know we're going to check that out, because I know my We Are One task force, they're probably texting me right now. We are doing a screening for your movie. So that is an amazing thing. We're going to support you in that effort.
Thank you.
So you, Dr. Kumaplay?
I want to tell everybody, your child is special. Love them for who they are and who God created them to be. They have a gift in them that has to be unlocked. And do not just look at their development as the only thing that is a negative, but see the positive in them. And you're doing a fantastic job as a parent. So appreciate yourself for that. And check us out at mygoalinc.org. And we're happy to really, really come alongside you. So
great. We have a lot of information. So thank you guys for hanging in there and attending this panel. You know why? Because our children matter. See, can't really see that, but our children do matter, and our Black children matter. And we need to make sure that we continue to support all of our children. So with that, we are going to sign off, and we thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.